Greetings. It is a joy to be with you in this virtual space. Our church community welcomes you, whether you are new or a longtime member. We especially want to welcome those who are here for the first time. If you would like to learn more about our community and its online offerings, please go to nsuc.org and sign up for our newsletter. There has never been a better time to get involved or become a member of the North Shore Unitarian Church. We would love to get you connected, and we welcome you today. As is our annual Halloween tradition, we start this service with a very spooky opening. Our children showed up yesterday for a socially distanced March of the Goblins. So let's begin our worship by celebrating their joy and the joy of this time of year.
My spiritual companions, welcome. As so many cultures commemorate their ancestors at this time of year, we too will remember. Today we will honor those who have come before and explore the lessons that they have given for our own lives. This is a time of tenderness and grief, and also a time of inspiration and hope. Let us hold all of that here today. Our opening reading is titled "The Ancestors" by Jackie Wills. The ancestors are having a summit. They chase around the garden, disturbing the hens. Silver birches shake, light shudders in the branches. The ancestors try on dresses delivered by the centuries. They roam through like bandits. When they speak, it's with the yellow eyes of a fox, and the clicks of an orca. They wrestle naked on the grass for the best shoes. And tomorrow they're having a banquet of possets and pears. They sit on that table, whistling happy birthday, promise to leave white dishes at your door. Let us welcome our ancestors to our door. Let us welcome them into our hearts, and let us welcome each other to this day in this place. My spiritual companions, welcome. And so we light our flame. This flame affirms the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment.
This quilt is upcycled from the worn-out suit coats and pants of my ancestors, fabric that was too nice, too valuable, and too wet with tears from funerals and weddings for my thrifty ancestors in central Illinois to throw away. This quilt, like neatly planted rows of corn ready for harvest, its knots lovingly tied by hand in row after row. This quilt weighs 10 pounds, just enough weight to stop the wind on a cold ride back from a country church service or a cold winter's night in a drafter prairie farmhouse. This quilt. Welcome home, my shell-shocked and gassed great-grandfather when he returned from over there. This quilt. Embraced relatives on those first nights alone in bed after the loss of a loved one. This quilt, when draped over chairs, makes the perfect fort for a boy and his two younger sisters. This quilt is a playmat for the next generation. This quilt, its heavy corner lifted each morning after much-deserved rest, ready as I'll ever be to face the world, ready to stitch, mend, heal, scrape together, rebuild, repair, plow, plant, harvest, mourn, and celebrate, to do whatever the day demands to keep going. This quilt. To my ancestors, some whom I know and so many I do not, thank you for this quilt.
North Shore Unitarian Church is a community that is grounded in love, guided by reason, committed to spiritual growth, and striving for justice. We accomplish this mission through the generous donations of our members and friends. And so we invite you to text your donation now. Please note that in order to give, you must include NSUC, the designated fund, and the amount. To pay your pledge via text, text NSUC Pledge 50 to 73256. To add to the Share the Plate program for this month, text NSUC Share 50 to 73256. And to give an added gift this year above and beyond your pledge, text NSUC Donate 50 to 73256. Thank you so much for your generous support of our community.
Beloved companions, let us now welcome our ancestors with these words adapted from Christina Shu and Tara Little. The ritual of welcoming and honoring ancestors is an ancient spiritual practice found in many cultures and traditions. Thus, today we pay tribute and express gratitude to our ancestors. From our histories, our ancestors call to us, asking whence we come and how and whither. We are grateful for their gifts, their lessons, and their challenge, calling us into accountability and responsibility to fulfill their hopes and aspirations. For what they dreamed be ours to do. We call on and invoke our parents, grandparents, aunties and uncles, our siblings from across time and place to be here with us. We call on the early Unitarians and Universalists, lay people and ordained ministers who brought our faith tradition to Illinois and the Central Midwest. We call on the ancestors of North Shore Unitarian Church who built, grew, and dreamed this church and this community into being. We call on those who represent the people of Deerfield, those who strove to build beloved community, representing diverse cultures and traditions, including the indigenous peoples who were the original stewards of this land. We call upon our activist ancestors, those who struggled for justice, freedom, and liberation of all peoples, who challenge us to honor the fullness of each and every human being. We especially lift up those who battled the racism and oppression right here in Deerfield, which is still alive today. They ask us to join the ongoing struggle to make this city whole. We call upon and honor the beauty of the earth, this particular part of creation that this church ministers in, the prairie and the Great Lake, our interconnectedness to nature and to the history of the land itself. We call upon and honor those who have lost their lives to the COVID-19 coronavirus and its complications, including those who have died due to lack of access to health care and adequate nutrition. They ask us to continue the fight for justice. And now, we ask you to call to mind your own particular ancestors, family roots, spiritual mentors, and guides. Each one of us brings into this space our own network of people and places. And as we play some music, we invite you to type the names of your beloved departed into the chat. May our ancestors guide us on our way. May they bless this space and time and the work we do. Blessed be. Our reading today is from the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the afflicted. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners, to comfort all who mourn, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair.
I would like to start today with a poem by Lucy Brock-Broido. Its meaning strikes me as original and different every time that I read it. Here is the poem. When you have won, good voyager, your pilgrimage will be calamitous as a victory, got by slashing and burning your own tailored fields of gold. A cocoon will bloom in the empty chest of the beloved lavishly. I do not want to be a chrysalis again. How long will I have to live here, quickening in my fine-spun case like a folded pilgrim, blushing till I am moth? The nightmares have come back. The nightmares have come back like women winding their hair in sullen braids, untroubling as the sound of flour being shifted onto the parchment, shifting as it winnows itself. Powder is dread, refined. The imperative? To win. And all of this happened after keeping mute for many years, like a sallow box of baking soda with no expiration date, innocuous, absorbing everything. Some grief is larger than my body is. So ends the poem. The collection that this poem appears in is called Trouble in Mind, and it often focuses on the subtlety of mental states. I have a feeling that this poem was not composed as a political poem, as a political statement. And yet this individual experience of grief that is communicated in this poem speaks so much to this moment. There is so much impending dread. There is worry about what is going to happen around the election this week. There is fear of how the Supreme Court will rule in future cases of LGBTQ rights and women's autonomy. There are questions of racial justice that are roiling our country. There are ecological anxieties. And there is the grief of more than 1 million people worldwide who have died from the pandemic, some of whom we have known. Perhaps it feels like powder slowly being sifted onto parchment, a quiet accumulation of worry. Or perhaps the grief feels like a box of baking soda with no expiration date, absorbing everything. Some days, many days, it absorbs me. This is the time of year when many spiritual traditions honor their ancestors. And in the Christian tradition, many celebrate All Souls Day. Others celebrate El Dia de los Muertos. Some traditions that have African roots celebrate a feast for Gede, the spirit of the ancestors. The Celtic tradition honors Samhain, which is the time when the veil that separates the land of the living and the land of the dead is thought to be thinnest. And so I wonder, in this time of anxiety and grief, how can these traditions of recalling our ancestors provide us with hope and comfort? How can this practice offer inspiration amidst uncertainty? One way to do this is to honor specific individuals, as Anne beautifully asked us to do today in her prayer. And we do this by recalling the love that we shared with the beloved dead. We may remember tenderly a parent or grandparent who has died. We may remember the specific ways that they changed us. We may remember what we learned from them. We can remember their strength and how they persevered, how they showed courage and fortitude and heart in their own lives. Another part of remembering past generations is remembering the hope that those generations held for the world, even in the face of great challenge. Now, we are going to hear from our wonderful choir in just a moment, and we'll sing "We'll Build a Land" along with them. I used to think that song was triumphalist, an assertion that we knew just how to build the perfect world. It rubbed me in the wrong way. But the words are actually drawn from the Hebrew prophets. And the thing is, Isaiah didn't live in the perfect world. Rather, he lived in and critiqued a society that was riven with injustice and inequalities. When he said things like, "We'll build a land where we bind up the broken, we'll build a land where the captives go free," it's because he lived in a land with people who have been trampled and broken, who were both literally and figuratively captives to injustice. His hope for something different was an improbable hope, and he knew that. And yet, still, even in the midst of those incredible challenges, he did hold hope. He knew well the challenges of injustice, but showed that it is still possible to imagine a different world. Now, this approach would resonate with Monica Coleman's theology. In her book, Making a Way Out of No Way, the womanist theologian offers yet another way to glean hope from our ancestors. She writes of how generations of Black women have shown creative resilience in overcoming obstacles, enslavement, Jim Crow, grinding inequalities, daily invective, microaggressions, and the double jeopardy of racism and sexism have at times seemed insurmountable and at times have been insurmountable. But Coleman points out that past generations have often found ways to make a way out of no way. They have found ways to creatively move forward into the future, even when the future looks confusing, uncertain, or dim. Coleman calls this the process of rememory, and I quote her here. The process of rememory is one approach to keeping the past alive in the present and the future. We are called to remember our past and incorporate it into our own process of becoming. And as we do that, we can use past survival techniques to help ourselves live into the future. She continues, when we are able to highlight the best of our current becoming, we honor the past. Honoring the past helps us to make a way out of no way. In other words, we can remember the many, many groups of people who faced incredible adversity and yet still managed to find some hopeful path forward. A novel that I have found inspiring in this vein is J. California Cooper's book, The Wake of the Wind. It tells the story of an African-American family in the waning years of the Civil War. After being freed from bondage, they face hunger and lack of shelter. They experience brutality and racism and oppression. They settle in one state and are forced to flee to another state. But each step of the way, with every ounce of adversity they experience, they endure. They eventually thrive. Toward the end of the book, one character implores future generations to remember their struggle. He says this to his partner, "Let's me and you holler in the wind to our future blood, say, don't y'all forget us, we are how you got here. And so they hollered to the wind, and the wind carried the sounds off through the trees toward the sun. Where did the words fly to? To me? To you? Now, I hold Coleman's and Cooper's words with a lot of humility. I do not want to co-opt a theological or historical framework that was created specifically to give sustenance to Black folks today. That is not what I'm trying to do here. But if I can be humbly inspired by their approach, I think that it has a lot to tell us about how to move forward in this moment, about how all of us can move forward in this moment. As we bear witness to the dread and the heartbreak in our world, as we listen to ongoing hateful rhetoric and fear for our rights, as we feel the pain of the natural world that is being destroyed, as we experience the loss of friends and loved ones to the coronavirus, as we worry over the racial injustices that continue to roil this country, we can also hold the memory of the many groups of past ancestors who were able to make a way during times of enormous difficulty. We can read their inspiring stories. We can appreciate their resilience and their endurance. And we can imagine a future that emerges from their hope and their justice seeking rather than one that emerges from destructive and oppressive trajectories that we see alive in this world today. Contemporary white America doesn't offer many opportunities to remember. It tends to be a future-oriented society that's grounded in notions of success and progress. Besides cultural remnants such as Halloween and religious remnants such as All Souls Day, we barely acknowledge death and those who have gone before. And perhaps this is a way of saying, you know what? We're just fine with the comforts of the present, thank you very much. We don't need to glean inspiration from the past or to worry ourselves over it. Perhaps it even insulates us from having to concern ourselves with ways that we need to rectify past injustices. All of those things could be true. But in so much as our contemporary culture advises us not to think about the past and not to think about past ancestors, it's a theology for sunny times. These are not sunny times. When we find ourselves with griefs that are too big for our bodies, anxieties for the world that sift through us like the powder of dread, futures moth-eaten by uncertainty, perhaps it's precisely then that we need the wisdom of our ancestors. It's then that we need to feel their courage and honor their techniques of survival. And as we ready ourselves to go forth into this national election, and my spiritual companions, if you have not yet cast your vote, what are you waiting for? Please go do so. As we get ready for this national election, let us remember these inspiring stories from the past. These paths that were created long ago that brought past generations closer to justice. We can honor those paths and we can build upon them as we move forward into the future. Let us remember those ancestors, whether they are our ancestors or another person's forebears, all of those ancestors who have shown up and created paths of resilience and hope. Let us remember those people who believed that we could build a better land, even in the midst of great challenge. May their stories serve as inspirations as we go forth from this place. My spiritual companions, amen. I love you. And for God's sakes, go vote. If you found our service today inspiring, you are invited to share the link with your friends and family. Tell them about the North Shore Unitarian Church. Invite them to worship and invite them to the many different offerings that we have throughout the week. We would love to connect with them and with anyone else who would like to become involved in our beloved community. You can find the link to Coffee Hour in your newsletter, so please do plan to join us in a couple of minutes. First, by way of closing, I offer these words from the poet Nancy Wood. My spiritual companions, hold on to what is good, even when that is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even when it is a tree that stands alone. Hold on to what you must do, even when that thing is a long, long way from here. Hold on to hope, even when it's easier letting go. And hold on to the hands of our beloved dead, of our ancestors, even when it's easier to forget. Let them continue to inspire us today and as we go forth from this place. Amen. And go in peace.